How goes it, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to talk about Slick Pulla's 2005 mixtape, Fourth Ward Day. Now, this is a DJ Drama Gangsta Grills mixtape, if you didn't know that. And it's very similar. Slick Pulla is a homie and kind of affiliate of Jeezy, and he was in the group USDA with Jeezy. But it's very similar to Jeezy's Trap or Die and Can't Ban the Snowman mixtapes, which is definitely pretty kick ass. Both of those are Gangsta Grills also, so it's interesting to kind of get that. But the thing about this project is, like, it dropped in 2005. If you go to DatPiff and you see this project on DatPiff, it says that it was uploaded in November 2006. But I definitely feel like just because I didn't see any songs from 2006 on here, I feel like this just screams to me that this was rooted in 2005, and that's when it was made. I want to say, I think it came out after Trap or Die, which I want to say Jeezy's Trap or Die mixtape came out in either January or February of 2005. But I definitely want to say that this one was probably right around the time that Jeezy dropped the Thug Motivation 101 album in the summer of 2005. So it's interesting that he was trying to kick off Slick Pulla's career just like that when he hadn't even had a debut album out yet. At least a mainstream debut album yet. So it's kind of the concept there. But Slick Pulla is basically, if you don't know who Slick Pulla is, if you've heard the song White Girl by USDA, which was Young Jeezy's group back then, he's the second rapper on that song, and he's pretty good. He definitely is like a pretty cohesive swag rapper. He's got some good lines, some good punchlines, that type stuff. He definitely was a part of that swag rap movement that included rappers like T.I., Jeezy, 2 Chainz, Young Jock, Young Dro, some of those type people. He's from Atlanta. But a thing to note about this project by Slick Pulla, about this project by Slick Pulla is just the fact that the original songs that he's kind of on do not feel like Dirty South beats. He kind of tends to pick more East Coast and kind of Wu-Tang and more stuff like that type productions, Nas and Wu-Tang and those type people. And this is kind of interesting because it's different from Jeezy's style. It's different from Blood Raw's style. I mean, Blood Raw was kind of more of that Miami bass, and Jeezy was more of that A-Town style. But really, none of the original songs that I feel like, minus maybe Graham's, really remind me of anything that would have sounded out of Atlanta at the time. I mean, you're not going to find a song like Trap Star or Go Crazy or Soul Survivor that Jeezy did. I mean, that doesn't really have the same pitch for Slick Pulla on here. It's not like that's a bad thing, but it's just kind of the concept. I feel like I definitely would have liked like Slick Pulla's version of like a Go Crazy type song. You know, they both were pretty much beasts in the drug dealer game around that time. The way that they talk, they're both rooted in that sort of vibe that came up. Another thing I'm surprised is the fact that Slick Pulla never talked about the snowman type stuff that Jeezy did. It's kind of a concept, you know. Jeezy was like the snowman back in 2005, but Slick Pulla never mentions the snowman at all. That's too bad. It's just that's an extra thing to notice, but that's kind of the concept. They are pretty tight, and they have some good songs here on this project. It just feels like an extra taste of Trap or Die and an extra taste of like Can't Ban the Snowman. So I'm gonna go ahead and recommend the 10 and a half songs out of 22 to you. So those 10 songs would be the intro, Grams, Neck of the Woods, The Voice Box, Beasts in the Kitchen, Let It Off, So Aggressive, Nike Duffel Bag, Straight Drop, and then Sitting Sideways. And then the almost song is Tear It Up, and the reason why that song's an almost song is because you can find it on Jeezy's Thug Motivation 101 album. So yeah, that's basically the concept. I'm going to talk about some of these ones I recommend. So the original songs on here, to talk about those first, I really feel like the intro, Grams, Let It Off, and the voice box all have some pretty stellar beats on here. Like Grams really feels like to me like a vanilla club bop. This is probably one that I would play just at like a simple vanilla kind of club and stuff, not quite like a nightclub or some sort of rave or something like that, but just kind of regular vanilla club, that sort of thing. Intro really has like this snaking and kind of looming type beat. This really feels like a sprawling, very similar to a song I heard by Kid Cudi the other day. Or it just really has like a complete looming kind of feel towards it that I just really liked. I just appreciated that one. Really kind of a haunting intro in a lot of ways. The voice box probably has the best beat on here in terms of original productions. I definitely appreciated that one. But the thing about it is this one sounded really East Coast. This did not sound like anything out of the Atlanta concept or context at all. This did not feel like a Jeezy song. This did not feel like anything from that sort of concept. This is kind of interesting, kind of get that, but it does have like a nice, real kind of piano esque. Kind of reminds me of like this is like a really sharp beat. Definitely like the production on there. Just a real haunting kind of one. And Let It Off kind of has like this thumping kind of drum pattern and bass type feel towards it. Just doesn't really ever get to having like a production loop on there. It's just really like the thumping bass the whole time. Definitely feel like that's a good one to get some drinks to and kind of get crunk to and that type stuff. Definitely a nice one. Easy kind of club bop there. And trying to think if there's another one. I think that about sums it up. There's only really like four songs that are original Slick Pulla songs. I really. Oh yeah, there's one more. Beast in the Kitchen. Now this song has Jeezy on here. This is another club bop, a little bit more of a nightclub type song for 2005, and a little bit of a night song for 2005 and that type stuff. And I just would have to say I'm glad that Jeezy showed up on this song and did a rap verse, just because the chemistry that these two have is pretty good. I definitely feel like they needed way more songs like that. I mean, I know Jeezy didn't want to steal the show from Slick Pulla, but this was a good example of some great chemistry and just an overall emphatic song that kicked a lot of ass. So I guess there's actually 5 songs kind of intended for a nightclub. I would say uh, Grams, the voice box, Let It Off, Beasts in the Kitchen, and possibly the intro all kind of feel that way. That's really this thing. I mean, really, this left me a lot hungrier for Slick Pulla in terms of like a solo record. And it's really too bad that Slick Pulla never put out an album. I remember back in the day when USDA dropped their Cold Summer album, I was always waiting for like Slick Pulla to finally drop a project. It was cool, and I enjoyed the fact that Blood Raw dropped an album, but I was always kind of like, where's the Slick Pulla one? It just didn't show up. This is an example as to how I would have wondered how it would have turned out, just because it just does not have songs like I Love It by Jeezy or Trap Star by Jeezy or Go Crazy by Jeezy or My Hood by Jeezy. It just doesn't have off the those kind of sing-songy, kind of simple and just effective kind of snap rap kind of trap songs. It's just surprising that, like I said, Slick Pulla just doesn't really do them. I mean, he does the drug game, but he's kind of more of like the East Coast kind of lyrical barb type dude for the most part. But it's just too bad that we didn't get that. But I did like Let It Off. I do feel like that's a nice one. I do feel like Grams and Let It Off are both some nice club bops, and then Beast in the Kitchen is pretty good. But talk about some of these freestyles. I feel like Neck of the Woods, Sitting Sideways, Nike Duffel Bag, and Straight Drop are all nice ones here to be able to kind of do. So Neck of the Woods, So Aggressive, Nike Duffel Bag, Sitting Sideways, and Straight Drop. So yeah, those are the concepts. Those songs, which is basically So Seductive, Gucci Bag by Players Circle, Sitting Sideways by Paul Wall, and So Seductive is by Tony Ayo and 50 Cent. Neck of the Woods by Birdman and Lil Wayne. And then Straight Drop is that song is off of Lil Jon's Crunk Juice album, but I want to say it's the song Get Crunk. I'm not sure. I don't remember that one as well, but that's just kind of the concept. So Slick Pulla has some good lines on here. Like I said, Slick Pulla is kind of like a swag rapper. He has these charismatic type flows and that type stuff, but a couple good lines that he had on here that I felt like stood out to me was he said like the son of a gymnast, I was born to flip. And then another one he said was, I'm heavy in the streets like Shamu the whale. So those are some good ones on here. He kind of goes for that sort of vibe. I mean, to me, he kind of comes off as more of like Jeezy's version of Lloyd Banks. I definitely see that in him as being Jeezy's version of Lloyd Banks. The same kind of concept. It's just too bad that Slick Pulla never dropped an album, because I wonder what that would have been about. But he's definitely like the lyrical one, and then like Blood Raw would be like Jeezy's version of Young Buck, same kind of cleanup guy, kind of crazy loose cannon type feel. So yeah, that's the concept. Now to talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy. Like there's a good slag of these songs on here. there's a good drag of these songs on here that just kind of lose the steam and just do not compose very interesting listens. Like I feel like Through These Streets, The Hood's Last Hope, the outro bonus song by USDA, the Diesel the Dawn song Dawn in the Game, and like Comeback, and then like even the Jeezy solo song A Town Summer were all some pretty bad ones. And on top of that, like Some People Hate, which was a remix of the Some People Hate song from from Jay-Z's Blueprint 2 album. I kind of feel like that didn't come off to me as the right song to rap to. I mean, it gave off. I want to say that that song was produced by Don Cannon, but I don't know. Maybe I could get that into that one, but at the point I didn't really enjoy that one. But to kind of say about the rest of these, there just were some real weak beats on here. Like I said, the anticipation, the hype for those didn't quite come off as like the correct. These songs did not have a lot of enjoyment factor to them, and they were just kind of not well produced and didn't have like enough emphasis to really catch attention, and they just kind of came off as like spare songs and filler in a lot of ways, which I do feel like probably about 4 or 5 songs could have been trimmed from this mixtape and it probably would have been better, but a lot of these just kind of carried energy and kind of made for some awkward listens. Like another song that I wasn't enjoying that much was Blood Raw's Blood Dope Game, which I did almost like the production on here. I did almost like the production on Blood Dope Game by Blood Raw, but I just couldn't get into that one enough. So that's another one that kind of did that. So the combination of just there not being enough good beats by Slick Pulla for him to rap on that are his own, and then his songwriting as far as trying to have songs that are just good. Like, I do feel like he can rap. He's kind of like Lloyd Banks in the game where he can rap really well. But the concept as far as the songwriting and making songs like Trap Star and Go Crazy in My Hood like Jeezy effortlessly did. But on top of that, he's really not that good of a beat selector either. I kind of look at that concept. Those are two areas that I feel like Slick Pulla probably could have worked on better with this project is just the songwriting as far as trying to come up with some interesting topics. Some of these are pretty simple, but the songwriting and then the beat selection just needed to be way better. And I think that's kind of the concept about it. So that's just kind of the thing. Jeezy did not have this problem. I do feel like Slick Pulla is a better lyricist than Jeezy, but Jeezy's probably got the more emphasis just because of his ability to get good song topics, get good beats, and just be able to have that drawl, which Slick Pulla and Jeezy both have a good drawl, but Jeezy just has the drawl in addition to all the other things that he has. So it's just kind of the concept where this USDA group really has like the swag part of it down, but unfortunately Slick Pulla's weaknesses kind of shine through when you realize that the song topics are not that interesting and the beats that he selected are not that interesting either. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that me liking basically 10.5 songs out of 22. I'm gonna go ahead and oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the song Connected by Slick Pulla. That one just really felt like a mean mug kind of song. I mean, that one, the emphasis when you listen to that song, I did like the fact that it had a rapper from Dem Franchise Boys on there, but it really kind of came off as just overtly kind of foul energy. I think it was trying to be like a crunk type number, but it just really felt like mean mug music, not just typical mean mug music where you just are pissed off and just kind of in kind of like a what kind of mood, but just that one kind of came off as this like an extreme version of mean mug music that I just wasn't, almost felt cheesy in a way. But so yeah, me liking 10.5 songs out of 22. I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 5.25 out of 10, or this mixtape a 5.25 out of 10, because there is some good stuff in here and there is enough original songs to warrant it, and he has some there's enough original songs in here to warrant it, and he does have some additional freestyles on here and some remix songs that work pretty well. But it's like I said, I mean, some of these weaknesses to this project are kind of blaring, and it just kind of has like the energy of like, it kind of gives off like some meh kind of vibes and some touches, and more often than you would want it to. So that's kind of the concept. But I do feel like Jeezy was on here just the right amount. I mean, I would have liked maybe a song or two more with Jeezy, and I would have liked like a better, like that's another song I forgot to talk about that I want to complain about, is just the fact that the Jeezy song A Town Summer was pretty poor. I mean, considering how much on fire that Jeezy was in 2005 between Trap or Die, the Boys in the Hood album, and then Thug Motivation 101, you would have thought that this would have been an easy victory for Jeezy and Slick Pulla to give Slick Pulla a stock young Jeezy song, but it just wasn't. I mean, the production on A Town Summer was pretty horrible, and it just really was not an interesting listen, and it really kind of was an abrasive and kind of not synchronized and melodic listen for much of anything on there. I really feel like Jeezy had so many good songs out of 2005. I was honestly surprised that this song was just not leagues better. That's just kind of the concept. He totally should have given Slick Pulla like another song like Trap or Die or something like that. But for me to say 5.25 out of 10, I do kind of feel like this project does have promise, but it just showcases Slick Pulla in some ways that are not quite as effective as it needed to be, and that's kind of the concept where I look after it in that sense. So the social score, I will go ahead and give like a 5 out of 10. Also, it's difficult to kind of grade that just because these are freestyles, and I mean, he does have the effectiveness down, but I really would have liked a few more original songs on here to see what he could do. But I just feel like, in terms of that, yeah, when you hear him on a song that's already been made and that type of stuff is already, when you hear him on a song that's already a hit, it's not that big a deal just because that you can trust that song. But when it's on some of this new stuff, there's only like 3 or 4 times where the club bops and the outgoing senses on here really shine through. I mean, there's some other Slick Pulla songs, but they just don't shine him in a good light enough to really say, hey, this is a kick-ass rapper. So it just kind of feels like Slick Pulla kind of got the shaft. I mean, it's a good attempt at trying to replicate Trap or Die and Can't Ban the Snowman, but I kind of feel like I would say it's a shade or two weaker than Can't Ban the Snowman, but probably about, I remember not giving Trap or Die like a very rave score, so I would probably say it's about on par with Trap or Die. It's about the same emphasis as that project, just to kind of look after it and the effectiveness of just kind of saying that that's how it goes. That's just kind of the thing. It's about in the same vein. It's the same kind of stock as like Trap or Die, but it's just not as good as Can't Ban the Snowman. So that's kind of the concept about it there. So in terms of the future, like it's really difficult to kind of say that about Slick Pulla just because I know that he's at least not affiliated with Jeezy anymore, and really there's no Wikipedia page or much of any articles about his discography. So it's just kind of shots in the dark as far as trying to figure out where and what he's really been up to and that type of stuff. But this is a decent debut, and I feel like it's got some gems on there, but I definitely would have liked more original songs that hit and better songwriting.